thing about 50-50 choices. When you make a choice and you think it's 50-50, sometimes things aren't 50-50. You're not making a 50-50 choice. You're making a choice that fits a pattern. It fits a pattern, you know. It's like when you go to a restaurant. You know, you might go to a restaurant and you pick a particular thing, let's say the bacon cheeseburger. You know, and they ask you, well, do you want French fries or onion rings? And you say, French fries. And you think you're choosing because you really are choosing, right? The next time, say a week later, you go to the same restaurant with somebody and you look at the menu and you pick the same thing. And then another week later, you pick the same thing. And another week. And let's say several times, let's say for the last 10 times you've been to that restaurant, you picked the same thing. Now, forget about the fact that you picked the same restaurant 10 times. Forget about that. But you have a menu that have about 30 or 40 different items on it. And you keep picking the same thing. And even when given the choice between French fries and onion rings, you keep picking French fries. But, you know, in the moment, at the moment, you may not even be aware that you're picking the same thing over and over again. And I think that's kind of like the way life is. You know, sometimes we make choices to do things. And we do things randomly. I'm just going to put this over here. And we don't think about what it is that we're choosing. See, I kind of think that happens in life. We get into a thing where it is kind of a forced situation. Sometimes, you know, it's funny, I kind of think in life, things are forced without being forced. It's kind of like, you know, it's the art of what is it? The art of fighting without fighting, you know, Bruce Lee type thing. You know, it's a kind of thing where it's also the choice of choosing without choosing. You're making a choice, but you're not really making a choice. You're kind of, you know, if somebody forced you to make a choice, let's say if I put a gun up to you, or if I threaten to fire you from a job unless you do something a certain way, you have to make the choice I said, or else you get fired. And it's the same thing. You have to make a choice. You're in a forced option. Make this choice or else. Make this choice or else. You have to choose to do this thing or else. And there are a lot of times when that's the way things look like it is. You know, you have to choose. You're in a forced situation. Well, some people put you in a situation where you either choose to do this or we're not friends anymore. You know, when it's really up in your face, yeah, you notice it, you pay attention, you know. It's just like what William James said, yes, forced options is momentum, but it's when you become conscious of that. What about a situation where you think you're just randomly choosing something? Every moment you think you could just as easily choose. Look, it's just like if you're an alcoholic, for example. But you decide not to struggle with it. You don't struggle with it. You just go with it. You know, you decide every day I'm going to drink and drink and drink and drink. And you don't think, I'm making a choice. Have a drink or not have a drink. You know, it's not a debate. You're not deliberating. You know, it's just like when you think about it, and I think that's a good word, deliberate. Just like a jury. You know, you think about juries that when, you know, the trial is over, all the evidence has been presented, and then they go back in the jury room and they deliberate. Well, a lot of times in life, you're not really deliberating over something. Like when you go to a restaurant, you're not deliberating over what you're going to have to eat. You may even look up and down the menu. You go and you look at the menu and you look up and down and you look at everything on the menu. And say, I think I'm going to get the cheeseburger. And let's say the person with you, who's been with you all these 10 times, and they say, you know, I noticed you always get the bacon cheeseburger. And you always get it with French fries. And at that moment, because I think of an incident similar, but it was a different thing, where I was doing something like that, and I didn't even think about it until somebody pointed it out to me. I was making the exact same choice each and every time. And yet, at that, you know, at the moments I was doing things, I thought I was just doing things randomly. I thought my behavior and my actions were random. See, a lot of times we think that we act randomly, when in fact we really aren't. Everything we do fits a pattern. There's a pattern to what we're doing. But you're not conscious of that pattern. You're not aware of it. You're not aware that you're making the same. Look, because in that moment, you don't think of it as a choice. Let's think about it. Another example, something simple that most of us do, not all. But if you're driving a car, you get to the traffic light, the light turns red, you stop. It turns green, you go. You're making a choice. But here's the thing. In the moment when you're doing it, you don't really think of it as a choice. I mean, because it only would come to you that this is like a choice if somebody actually asked you, a question which nobody really asked you. And that is, why did you stop? If you the light turned red, you stopped. And I said, why did you stop? And the person may look at me like, are you crazy? The light just turned red. Of course I'm going to stop. But it is a choice because you do have an option. The option is to keep going. And you might think, well, shit, that's crazy. That's nuts. Are you nuts? Have you lost your mind? I can't keep going. If I keep going, you see all that traffic coming when the light changes. You see how all that traffic comes, and you see there's a cop on the other side over there. I would have got a ticket and gotten an accident. Not necessarily in that order. Not necessarily in that order either. But the thing is, we all do that. We do it. See, it's the same thing even when you make videos on YouTube. I noticed that there are people, and sometimes I don't try to notice things, but you just notice that the people do certain things. There are patterns, and we're not aware of those patterns. And it's the same thing with me. Sometimes people point out things to me that I did something that I did before. And I always keep doing something a certain way. Sometimes you have a hand movement. You may move, I may put my hand back like that on my hair. Or I might do something with my, and I do this regularly, and I don't notice it. It's just random things that seem random, but they're not really random. I kind of realize it. That's why I asked the question, what is random? What is random? Random is when something doesn't particularly fit a pattern, but the truth is a lot of things do fit patterns. Things do happen in patterns. It's like an eclipse. If you could look at when is the next eclipse, scientists know. They know when the next eclipse is going to happen 200 years from now. It's not random. But, when it was back in the early days before there was science, these things seemed just random and arbitrary. And they were sort of assigned to something other than just natural ways in which things happen. Because people didn't want to have randomness. They wanted things to have order. But you couldn't predict. And just like with people unpredictable, things unpredictable, it meant some God got angry at some moment. You said something, did something, pissed him off, and all of a sudden he decided to blot out the sun. Today. That would happen. What do we do to piss God off? An earthquake happened. Random. What do we do? What do we do to piss God off? What do we do? We try to figure it out. We try to figure out why. But if you study it and look at it and look for patterns, you notice that things do happen. There are certain things that can give you a heads up, if you will. I was just reading an interesting article. I didn't read the whole thing, but I just read like a little bit of it. Because I was just randomly looking for stuff. Again, random. And it was about these scientists in Italy who were actually charged with manslaughter. I had to look at that. I didn't even see. I didn't notice when. I noticed it was an earthquake in 2009 or something, or 2008 or something like that. And 300 people were killed in Italy in an earthquake. And these scientists, a bunch of scientists and some civil servant in Italy were charged with manslaughter. I think they were even convicted of it and sentenced for manslaughter for failing to predict the earthquake. And I thought, well, that's kind of weird, That's like odd, scientists, because they should have been able to predict it. Maybe it would have been interesting to take a look at. I had to look at that more deeper but I was so busy doing so many other things, I didn't have time to sit down and just look at it in details. But it's just an interesting thought. that they would be sentenced for failing to predict something, for failing to warn people that there was going to be an earthquake. I think they may have known or had suspected there was going to be an earthquake, but they failed to warn people that an earthquake was coming. You know, is it possible to predict an earthquake? Well, I think I don't know much about earthquake or seismology and all that stuff, but I'm the type of Scientology. Don't get my words. Seismology. The thing is that I remember reading something where some years ago somebody did predict an earthquake and actually did warn people. And the earthquake happened. It wasn't in a movie earthquake. It was, although if you look at that movie, that was one of the things that they think got predicted, the earthquake. But here's the thing. If you think about it, suppose, it's not just suppose, I'm just thinking, imagine some scientists saying there's going to be a 9.8 magnitude or greater earthquake that's going to hit Los Angeles sometime within the next week, and they evacuate the city. Well, here's the thing. Just like in the movie Earthquake, even though one could argue about the merits of that movie. But, remember, if you remember the movie, why didn't they want to do it? Because, the whole concept of, you don't know. You're not 100% sure. And if you get these people, let's say you evacuate the whole city of Los Angeles, you got 3.5 million people. And then if you think about even the suburban areas, you got like 8 million or 10 million or however many millions of people. You got to get them away, and where you going to put them, and how you going to do it, and how you going. And if it doesn't happen, what if you have these people evacuating it for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, and the earthquake doesn't happen? What do? Let's say the people go back to Los Angeles, and let's say the earthquake don't happen the next month, the next year, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Everybody will still be talking about, and it'll hurt the possibility if the science improves to the point where they could actually predict the earthquake even better, or predict earthquakes better. You gotta build up public confidence. Public confidence gets hurt. People start to not trust science anymore. If they want people to evacuate the city the next time, people are going to say, "Now remember what happened last time?" They're going to remember the last time. So, that's the thing with science, is credibility and confidence. That's the key right there.